right? So the way that this request goes through is HTTP or HTTPS protocol. Actually, before that, I kind of forgot a couple of things in here. When you're talking about API, there could be two types of API, okay? One is SOAP, another is REST, okay? SOAP and REST. Now, SOAP becoming obsolete, okay? No company actually, right? No company actually, implementing new SOAP technology anymore, because SOAP, you can check what is SOAP stands for, but this P stands for protocol, right? SOAP is a protocol itself. But what REST API does, which you're talking about REST here, okay? What REST API does, REST API use HTTP protocol, the existing HTTP protocol, okay? But SOAP itself a protocol. Now think about this. If we have an existing protocol that we are using, and if we have to create our own protocol, SOAP is much difficult to really develop, right? But REST is much simpler because they're using an existing protocol. Sometimes they ask that interview question, what is the difference between SOAP and REST? Okay. Now the first thing I tell them is that, well, I only use REST API, because that's what we use our company. We're going to only talk about REST API today. Okay, we're not going to talk about SOAP. But you can say, well, but I do understand the differences, right? So SOAP is what? It's a protocol itself. And HTTP uses REST uses HTTP protocol. Another thing is SOAP is very difficult to develop. REST is very simpler because we already have it existing. Another thing, think about this. Any place, if there is an internet connection, right, we can do HTTP. Right? It doesn't matter what service you're talking about. So in a way, REST API is a platform more like an independent protocol. If we can send it by request by HTTP, it will work. But SOAP itself a protocol. So it is not going to talk to anybody, everybody, right? So if we want to send SOAP, I think something also have to have a SOAP enabled. But any service can work with REST API. So if you think about those three different differences, first is SOAP is a protocol itself, REST is an architecture. It uses an existing protocol, which is HTTP or HTTPS. Right? S stands for secure. That's the only difference. Right? Then SOAP is difficult to develop. REST is much faster and easier to develop. And you can talk about, well, because REST uses an existing protocol, right? It is more independent. It's kind of platform independent. But SOAP is not. Okay? So these are the three things, but we are only going to do REST. Okay, REST is the short name, but full name is RESTful Web Services. Right? If you look at your class note, right? RESTful Web Services. Now, how this thing works? Sometimes even interview questions, they want to say, okay, how did you do API testing, right? So the first thing is, if we want to do API testing, right, we need endpoints. We need this URI. What do we do with this URI? We send a request, right? Through HTTP. We send a request, right? Now, we just send the request, like when you're doing Google search, right? We send a request, right? We pass the data and it goes in there. So once we send the request through HTTP and the endpoint, we will receive a response. So this is pure data, right? We send a request that, hey, I want to see some JFK to San Francisco, November 7, coming back November 21st with 2 passengers. We send that request, they process it. We send this request to what? The endpoint, exactly that endpoint. and they will give us a response. Possibly all of this may end up giving us a response saying, okay, we have the flights, these are the prices that's available, right? So response can come in two format. One is XML, which you guys already know, another is JSON. These are data transfer. So we are going to get the data back, and you guys will see, we'll take a look at JSON, okay? That how JSON look like. You guys know how to XML look like, right? If you looked at the pom.xml, testng.xml, right? It has a tag, starting tag and ending tag, right? JSON has a similar one. But what I have found, most of the companies are using JSON, okay? And the reason is, first thing is the latest technology, but the good thing about JSON is much faster than XML. Okay, XML basically have an Excel kind of a mechanism behind the back, right? But JSON is much faster. I don't know exactly the mechanism is, but these are all purely data. Now think about what Priceline is doing is sending the request because they have access to, right? They may have to put some kind of authorization here, right? Putting this authorization that they achieve from American Airlines. If you want to start an online travel reservation, we can talk to all those companies, right? And we can get the API access, right? Yes, there could be monthly fees, there could be some restrictions like, okay, these many tickets you have to sell, right? All those kind of thing. But that's why doing business with the third-party companies and everything is much better these days. Right? So these are all API based. Now we send the request. Now the JSON format come in. Maybe we found, okay, American Airlines is offering non-stop service with $250. Delta is serving this, right? You get all the data. Now how you're going to display it? That's Priceline's job, right? Priceline will capture those data and then they're going to display those data. Right?
So can the data also come from both different formats as JSON and as well as XML?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Depending what they're using.
Depending what they want you to do, right? Most of the companies, they offer both. You can choose what format you want the data to, right? But mostly we're doing by JSON because it's much faster.
Is that because of Halloween?
Yeah, it's just much faster.
XML is slower and older.
Yeah.
In a way, it's the first, if you think about
Way-
the data transfer wise, like how
Way-
long we've been hearing about
At least
XML.
probably 30, 40
It's
years.
Excel form, right? It has like line as
No, the coding was
Oh,
like,
oh.
the language itself.
Oh.
Now, we get this return back now, Priceline can say, American Airlines return $250, it has the data. Now Priceline may put, extra $10 per ticket and they can charge that money and they, whatever the way that they process, right? As long as they have access to the data and they can play with the data, right? So how do we do the testing? First thing is we need an endpoint. We need an API endpoint. Second thing, we're going to send a request, and you will see we're going to practice this using Postman. That's the tool we're going to use. We're going to send a request, and we're going to get a response. We look at the responses. So this is the mechanism, how it works. Think about if you take your Bank of America ATM card and put in the TD Bank, right? And you put the password in, what it does, that machine directly communicate with the Bank of America. One of the endpoint, maybe a status endpoint, is saying, is this card actually a valid card, right? It may also respond, okay, how much money does this account have? Now, if you put the money, like you want to take money out, right? It gotta know how much the balance is, right? Now, it may, you may take the money out, then what it has to do, it has to send a request again, right? So there are going to be a lot of request and response going back and forth. It may send a request saying, okay, your customer took $500 out, so please update the database, right? That's how they're kind of communicating. So let's talk about what kind of testing we do, what kind of thing that we achieve from API. Okay? To make it nicer and easier to remember, this is how we say it. The functionality we do with REST API is called CRUD operations. We can do CRUD operation. Okay? In the interview, don't call it crude. Okay? Please, CRUD, no crude oil. Okay? CRUD. C stands for create. R stands for read. U stands for update. D stands for delete. So these are the operation, and if you think about, aren't all those a database operation? Right? All these are database operations. So using for REST API, what we test the CRUD feature. If they ask you, can you tell me more, like last week there was some interviews and this guy is asking, can you explain me a little bit details about what kind of API testing did you do? Right? In straightforward, you can say, well, the API testing I did, and first of all, I did the REST API testing, right? And the API testing I did is the CRUD feature, right? Create, read, update, and delete.
CRUD
Now-
operation or CRUD feature?
Feature or,
Request.
huh?
It's a request, right? So
Each of them are it's done by request, right? But these are basically functionalities.
You can say CRUD function.
Yeah, CRUD, you can say CRUD functions, right? Now, how do we do this? Well, first of all, we know how do we do REST API? Through a request, right? And request is done through what?